So, okay, here it is. My first video is not actually my first video. I was using this channel for, these kinds of videos a while ago, and then I decided to delete those and do something else, and then I deleted those, and now I'm doing this again. So this is my first video on the new iteration, and unlike those, I have a book background. Before, I was just sitting at my desk, and all you could see was like my window, but now I put my computer camera in front of my bookshelves, and so now you see my bookshelves because all the book people do that. I'm sitting down because none of my bookshelves are that high. Anyways, I am reviewing can you see that? The Altar of Victory by John Wise, A Tale of the Late Roman Empire. It is self-published. I think it might have been the first self-published book that I've read ever. At least I can think of. I guess Aragon. That's not really self-published. It's Aragon. It was like originally, but it's Aragon. Anyways, I found this in like the local author section at a bookstore in Colorado Springs, where I do not live, and where I do not live anywhere near. It's called West Side Stories. It's I don't remember, I think it would have been like the old town of Colorado City. It's a nice little store. I've been there a few times. But I don't live like anywhere near there. I was just in town, so this is local, but not to where I live. And it's self-published. So, I mean, I didn't even know that at the time, but I picked it up, it looked interesting, and so I decided to go into this blind, and I can regret that. This wasn't a horrible book, but it could have been far better. It took me from like before Thanksgiving, like a few days before Thanksgiving until now, which is like 10 days before Christmas. I don't know the exact date. I think it's the 16th right when I'm filming this. So it took me like nearly a month to read this 500-page book. I've read 500-page books. I don't know my record for a 500-page book, but it should not be taking me nearly a month. I could have had this finished before Thanksgiving break ended, which was my original plan. It just never engrossed me, and so it took me a while to read. I think I'm gonna. It just took me a while to read, and that was annoying because I wanted to get my Goodreads goal in before the end of the year, and that I'm not saying that it's super important that you have to get your Goodreads goal and you're a bad reader if you're not, but I wanted to do it. It was 40 books. I think that was like my 36th of the year, and if I had finished that in November, I would have had all of December to read 4 books, which I could have done. And, there's more valuable things, but it still would have been nice to get my goal. Anyways, but yeah, it was painfully middling. It wasn't exceptional. It felt like it could have. I'm not even going to say that it needed editing. It just needed a more experienced and more stylized author, because the writing wasn't bad. There were times when it felt a little modern, but it was just like 1 or 2 sentences in the whole book. The writing wasn't bad. It was mediocre, and it was mediocre to the extent where I couldn't be enthralled by it. It wasn't exhilarating. It wasn't interesting. It was just very boring, and there's so many things I would have rather read. There were times when I thought it might have been written by AI, but I have no reason for believing that. It was a hunch, and I'm not experienced in like dealing with AI. It was just a hunch. That it might, but I doubt that. Don't go around thinking this book was written by an AI. It was something that popped into my mind just because the writing was so bland. But it didn't have like any of those markers like M dashes, or you know what I'm talking about. You can still use M dashes without being AI. It's just set as a signifier, and AI can be written without having M dashes, or you can edit it out. But yeah. So I guess I might as well get into the plot of the book. is about the aftermath of the death of the Emperor Valentinian in the late Roman Empire. So that was 375, 376 AD. 376, and there are a few contenders for the throne, but in the end, it comes out mostly peaceful. The entire book is just people plot. Most of the book takes place within the, 1 or 2 months after his death, Valentinian's death, and it's just people scheming and trying to figure out, okay, how can I manipulate this to my own advantage? And it didn't really go anywhere. I mean, the emperor, the successor, Gratian. That sounds stupid, but that's like the proper pronunciation. The main successor, he comes out successful. He doesn't have a whole ton of opposition. He has like one of his half brothers is declared emperor, but he just accepts that and has him works around that. So he's completely successful. Nothing big happens. There's no murders. And there's a lot of characters. There were maybe 5 POVs that were like consistently reoccurring, and I mean, I have read these. I've read The Wheel of Time. They have a lot more than 5 characters per book. This was, I think, had 20, but it just didn't fit well. I mean, the reason I can accept that many characters in The Wheel of Time, which I don't always accept, is because I've known them for thousands of pages. This only had 500 pages to get me introduced to Symmachus. I know I'm in Latin, and I know I'm getting these pronunciations horrible, but there was Merobaudes, Marcellinus, Gratian, Symmachus, Ambrose. You're getting all these characters, and I don't think they were relevant to the politics of the time. It just doesn't feel like they're super relevant to the story. I think it would have, been a lot better if they had focused on just Gratian, maybe like one other person relevant to Gratian's court, and maybe a few POVs that branch out to like Merobaudes. But every once in a while, it should be mainly Gratian, because he had a proper character arc that changed a little. It did feel a little sudden, but yeah, it just had too big of a scope, too short of a book, too new of an author. Probably should not have done that. Like Ambrose, I feel like if you cut off Ambrose was a bishop of Milan. If you had cut him, I don't think much would have changed, and that would have been fine. So, yeah, I just think there was too large of scope, and as like a wannabe writer, I'm not gonna say aspiring, as a wannabe, I haven't written that much. I kind of see that with my stuff, because currently I'm writing something, and I have 3 main POVs, and I feel like, just from what I've heard people say, is that it's not a good idea for your first novel to have more than 1 POV, 2 at most if they're, in the same place at the same time. Mine's like, epic fantasy style. You'll have 3 people in 3 separate places, and they come together in like the middle of the book. So yeah, it makes me a little bit self-aware. Maybe I should not do that, just because of that. I do think self-published books might suffer from a lack of quality control, because anyone can go out and they can publish a book on Kindle without really any prior knowledge. So there's not too much quality control, and of course there's a lot of low quality stuff in traditionally published. Recently there's been a lot of talk about how there's a massive like editing problem. There aren't enough editors. The publishers just aren't having books edited because it's expensive, and they need to capitalize on the trends, because the current book economy is centered around book talk and romantasy, and stuff that really shouldn't matter. Um, yeah, I think that its themes are interesting. Since it was the late Roman Empire, after Constantine, there's this this very vivid friction between the pagans and the Christians who are now in charge. They aren't totally in charge, but the emperor's been Christian. I mean, the emperor's Christian, and so a lot of powerful people are Christian, and so a lot of people are converting, and so it's taking hold while the old religion is dying out but still hanging on. And I think just the perspective on what religion is was really interesting because you had, the Christian characters were very pious. They were very devoted to God. In more in the sense of what we would think of as religion. They were trying to be chaste and stuff and live a pious life. But the pagan characters, the best one was Symmachus. They were devoted to religion in a very, I don't even know what word you would use. Like maybe you wouldn't say legalistic, just in a traditionalist. Well, they only really value religion in the sense of it as tradition. So they're living out the values of the Roman people by doing these rituals. They don't really care about them all that much in and of themselves. Like you could say that occurs in modern society, but it's never so honest, if you know what I'm saying. And I don't know if that's like accurate to the times, but I do think it was a very interesting element to the book. Yeah, I would give this a. I would say anything something about the historical accuracy of it, but I don't know anything about that. I mean, I know a very small amount, but not enough to criticize the author's research. So I can't give you that, but it was still very interesting to see that dichotomy. How the pagans saw religion as pointless without it glorifying the state without glorifying the legitimacy of the Roman people, of the emperor, of Gratian. Gratian he refused the title of Pontifex Maximus, the head of the church, the head of the Roman religion, since that under the pagans it was the emperor would perform chief religious duties for the Roman religion, and now the Pontifex Maximus is that's the title of the Pope, like the current Pope. I don't know how that occurred, but it did, and there's hints of that of bishops trying to vie for the title of Pontifex Maximus. But it's never really brought to light, and that's fine. I mean, the scope did not need to be expanded further. It should have been reduced, and it should have focused on Gratian, his court, maybe a few other people. Symmachus was interesting as an alternative perspective, but you probably could have replaced that with someone. There was definitely someone within Gratian's court who could have fulfilled that role. I'm thinking of his mother, Gratian's mother, Marina Severa. She could have. I think it was hinted she was a pagan. But there was a servant, a general. He had pagan generals that were Ausonius. He had his tutor Ausonius. He could have been a pagan because he was pagan. And we did get that perspective a few times from him. But if just the Symmachus chapters of the Symmachus POV was shifted into Ausonius, his tutors, then that would have worked better. A lot of this has to do with decreasing the scope, developing it while just focusing on Gratian, because he was an interesting character. I liked him. I liked his wife. But of course, just didn't see much of him. Or we did see a lot of him. It's just too big of a scope. Should have been a lot smaller. I feel like it could have definitely existed if you just focused that. Those are really my ideas. So,